guesses who it is.
The Archbishop of Canterbury.
No.
The Archbishop of York.
Fortunately, that exhausts the archbishops. Now then, your last guess.
Richard Meryton, MP.
Wonderful. How did you know?
Well, it couldn't have been Father.
No, I suppose not. Not just after breakfast, anyway. Anything in the paper?
There's an article from Father pointing out that...
I never knew such a man as Robert for pointing out.
You're very cynical this morning, Richard.
The sausages were cold, dear.
Poor Richard. Oh, Richard, I wish we were on the same side as Father.
But he's on the wrong side. Surely I've told you that before. Viola, do you really think it would make a difference?
Well, you know what he said about you at Basingstoke the other day.
No, I don't, really.
He said that your intellectual arrogance is only equaled by your spiritual instability. I don't quite know what it means, but it doesn't sound the sort of thing you want in a son-in-law.
Still, it was friendly of him to go right away to Basingstoke to say it. Anyhow, you don't believe it.
Of course not.
And Robert doesn't, really.
Then why does he say it?
Ah, now you're opening up very grave questions. The whole structure of the British Constitution rests upon Robert's right to say things like that at Basingstoke. But really, darling, we're very good friends. He's always asking my advice. He doesn't take it, of course, but still he asks it. It was awfully good of him to insist on my staying here while my flat was being done up. I bless him for that. If it hadn't been for the past week, I should never have known you. You were just Viola, the girl I'd seen at odd times since she was a child. And now... Ah, why won't you let me tell your father? I hate it like this.
Because I love you, Richard. And because I know Father. He would, as they say in novels, show you to the door. And I want you on this side of the door for just a little bit longer.
I shall tell him before I go.
But not until then. That gives us 2 more days. You see, darling, it's going to take all I know to get round it. You see, apart from politics, you're so poor. Father hates poor people.
Hey, money!
I think that's what he means by spiritual instability.
Viola. Look out.
This one?
Thanks very much.
Good morning, Richard. Down at last?
Good morning. I did warn you, didn't I, that I was bad at breakfast?
Well, where's your mother?
I don't know. Do you wish to speak with her?
Yes, that would be nice.
All right. I'll get her.
Richard, why don't you get something to do?
My dear fellow, I've only just finished breakfast.
I mean, generally, and apart from your work in the house.
I have something to do.
Oh, reviewing. I mean, something serious. You should get a directorship or something in the city.
I hate the city.
Ah, there, my dear Richard, is that intellectual arrogance to which I had to call attention to the other day at Basingstoke.
Yes, so Viola was telling me.
You understand, of course, that I meant nothing personal. It is justly one of the proudest boasts of an Englishman that his political enmities are not allowed to interfere with his private friendships.
Oh, I shall go to Basingstoke myself one day.
Good morning, Mr. Meryton. I do hope your breakfast was all right.
Excellent, thank you.
That's right. Did you want me, dear?
Yes. Richard, what are your plans?
Is he trying to get rid of me, Mrs. Crawshaw?
Of course not. Are you, dear?
Perhaps we should come into my room, Margaret. We can leave Richard here with the paper.
No, I'm going.
I have some particular business to discuss. If you're not going out, I should like to consult you in the matter afterwards.
Right.
Sit down, Margaret. I have some extraordinary news for you.
Yes, Robert.
This letter has just come to me by hand. 199 Lincoln's Inn Fields. Dear Sir, I have the pleasure to inform you that under the will of the late Mr. Anthony Clifton, you are the beneficiary to the extent of £50,000.
Robert.
Wait. A trifling condition is attached, namely that you should take the name of Wurzel-Flummery.
Robert.
I have the honor to be your obedient servant, Mr. Dennis Clifton.
Robert, whoever is he? I mean the one who's left you the money.
I've not the slightest idea, Margaret. No doubt we should find out before long. I've asked Mr. Dennis Clifton to come and see me.
Leaving you £50,000.
Wurzel-Flummery?
We can hit a second car now, can't we, dear? And what about moving? You always said you ought to be more in the central part. Mr. Robert Crawshaw, MP of Curzon Street. It sounds so much more cabin-y.
Mr. Robert Wurzel-Flummery, MP of Curzon Street. I don't know what that sounds like.
I expect that's the only legal way of putting it, dear. They can't really expect us to change our name to Wurzel Fothergill.
Wurzel-Flummery.
Yes, didn't I say that? I'm sure you could talk this lawyer around. After all, it doesn't matter to him what we call ourselves. Write him one of your letters, dear.
You don't seem to apprehend the situation, Margaret.
Yes, I do, dear. This Mr.
Anthony Clifton, dear.
Yes, well, he's left you 50,000 pounds together with the name of Wurzel-Flummery.
Wurzel... Oh, never mind.
Yes, will you tell the lawyer that you will take the 50,000 pounds, but you don't want the name? It's too absurd, when everyone knows of Robert Crawshaw, MP, to expect to call yourself Wurzel-Fothergill?
Yes. The point is that Mr. Clifton has left me the money on condition that I change my name. If I don't take the name, I don't take the money.
But is that legal?
Perfectly. It is often done. People sometimes change their name on succeeding to some property.
I thought it was only when your name was Moses and you changed it to Talbot.
Wurzel-Flummery?
I wonder why he left you the money at all. Of course, it was very nice of him. But if you didn't know him, why do you think he did it, dear?
I know no more than this letter. I suppose he had followed my career and was interested in it, and being a man with no relations, felt he could safely leave this money to me. No doubt Wurzel-Flummery is his mother's maiden name, with the name of some friend even dearer to him than that. He wished the name perpetuated, perhaps recorded, not unworthily, in the history of our country, and made this will accordingly. In a way, it's kind of a sacred trust.
Then, of course, you'll accept it, dear.
It requires some consideration. I have my career to think about, my duty to my country.
Yes, dear. Money is a great help in politics, isn't it?
Money wisely spent is a help in any profession, Margaret. The view of riches which socialist and such like people take is entirely ill-considered. A rich man who is spending his money thoughtfully is serving his country as nobly as anybody.
Then we could have the second car and the house on Curzon Street?
We must not be led away. 50,000 pounds properly invested is only 2,000 a year, when you've deducted the income tax, and the tax on unearned income is
Oh,
quite
but
high.
surely if we have to call ourselves Wurzel-Flummery, it would count as earned income.
I fear not. Strictly speaking, all money is earned. Even if it is left to you by another, it is left to you in recognition of certain outstanding qualities which you possess. But Parliament takes a different view. I do not say for a moment that 50,000 pounds would not be welcome. 50,000 pounds is nothing to be
I
sneezed
should
at.
think not, indeed.
And without this preposterous condition attached, I should be pleased to accept this sacred trust. And I would endeavor, Mr. Speaker,
Margaret, to carry it out to the best of my poor ability. But Wurzel-Flummery?
You should soon get used to it, dear. I had to get used to the name of Crawshaw after I had been at Debenham for 25 years. It is surprising how quickly it comes to you. I think I signed my name Margaret Debenham only once after I was married.
The cases are rather different, Margaret. Naturally, a woman who from her cradle looks forward to the day when she shall change her name cannot have this feeling for the honor of his name, which every man feels. Such a feeling is naturally more present in my own case, since I have been privileged to make the name of Crawshaw in some degree well known. I might almost say famous.
I used to be called the beautiful Miss Debenham of Leamington. Everybody in Leamington knew of me, of course. I am very proud to be Mrs. Robert Crawshaw.
In a way, it would mean beginning all over again. Days after battle in politics to get your name out before the public. Whoever is this man, Wurzel-Flummery, people would say.
Let's look on the bright side, dear. 50,000 pounds is 50,000 pounds.
It is, Margaret, and no doubt it is my duty to accept it. But, well, all I say is that a gentleman would have left it without any conditions attached, or merely wished that I should take the name without going so far as to enforce it. Then I could have looked at the whole matter in an all-around impartial spirit.
The linen is marked RMC now. Of course we should have to have that altered. Do you think RMF would do, or would it have to be RMW-F?
What? Oh, yes, there will be a good deal of that to attend to. I think I should get Richard's opinion on this, Margaret. I should like to get his ideas on it.
Do you think he would be very sympathetic, dear? I mean, he makes jokes about serious things, like bishops and hunting, just as if they weren't at all serious.
I do not hold myself in the least bit bound to act on anything he says. I regard him merely as a constituent, Margaret.
Then I will
Margaret, how do you feel about this?
Just whatever you feel, Robert.
Ah, thank you, Margaret. You're a good wife to me.
Well, what's the news? Been left a fortune?
Yes, by Mr. Anthony Clifton. I never met him and I know nothing about him.
Oh, I congratulate you. Oh, to them that hath. But what on earth do you want my advice for?
There's a slight condition attached.
Oh-ho.
Namely, that with this money, £50,000, I should take the name of Wurzel-Flummery.
What?
I said it quite distinctly, Wurzel-Flummery.
Mr. Robert Wurzel-Flummery, MP. One of the most prominent of our younger parliamentarians. Oh, you.
Shall we discuss this seriously or shall we leave it?
How can you discuss a name like Wurzel-Flummery seriously? Mr. Wurzel-Flummery, in a few well-chosen words, seconded the motion. Sir, went on Mr. Wurzel-Flummery. Oh, poor Robert.
You seem quite certain I shall take the money.
I am quite certain.
Would you take it?
Well, I wonder.
After all, as William Shakespeare says, what's in a name?
I can tell you something else that William Shakespeare said. He who filches from me my purse with 50,000 in it steals trash. Trash, Robert. But he who filches from me my good name of Crawshaw and substitutes the rotten one of
As
Wurzel.
a matter of fact, Wurzel-Flummery is a very good name. I seem to recall some Hampshire Wurzel-Flummerys. It's a very laudable spirit on the part of a dying man to wish to perpetuate these old English names. It all seems quite straightforward and natural. If I take this money, I should have nothing to be ashamed of.
I see. Look here, may I ask you a few questions? I should like to know just how you feel about this business.
Go ahead.
Suppose a stranger came up in the street to you and said, "My poor man, here's £5 for you." Of course, you'd tell him to go to the devil, wouldn't you?
In a more parliamentary language, perhaps, Richard. I should tell him I never took money from strangers.
But if it were £10,000, then would you take it?
No, I most certainly shouldn't.
But if he had left it to you in his will, then you would?
I thought you were leading up to that. That, of course, is entirely different.
Why?
Well, wouldn't you take £10,000 if it were just left to you by a stranger?
I dare say I should. But I should like to know why it would seem different.
Well, in the first place, when a man is dead, he wants his money no longer. You can therefore be certain you're not taking anything from him which he cannot spare. And in the next place, it's the man's dying wish that you should have the money. To refuse would be to refuse the dead. To accept almost becomes a sacred honor.
It really comes down to this, doesn't it? You won't take it from him when he's alive, because then you couldn't decently refuse him a little gratitude. But you know that after he's dead, it doesn't matter a whit to him what happens to his money, so you can take it without feeling any gratitude at all.
No, I shouldn't put it like that.
I'm sure you wouldn't, Robert.
No doubt you can twist it
All
about
right,
anyway.
we'll leave that and go on to the next point. Suppose a stranger offered you £5 to shave all the hair off your head. If he met you suddenly in the street, decided he disliked your appearance, took out a fiver and begged you to hurry off and alter yourself. Of course, you'd pocket the money and hurry straight off to your barber's.
Now you are merely being offensive.
I beg your pardon. I should have said if he had left you £5 in his will. All right, then, £10, £20, £100, £1,000, £50,000. It's just a question of price. £50,000, Robert. A pink tie with purple spots, hair parted across the back, trousers with a patch in the seat. Call myself Wurzel-Flummery. Anything you like, you can insult me. Anything you like, gentlemen, for £50,000. Only you must be sure to leave it to me in your will, for then I can feel that it is a sacred duty. A sacred duty, my lords and gentlemen.
It is evidently useless to prolong this conversation.
No, Robert, I've finished. I just took the other side, and I got carried away. I should have been at the bar.
You take such extraordinary views. You must look facts in the face, Richard. This is a modern world, and we are modern people living in it. Take the matter-of-fact view. You may like or dislike the name of Wurzel-Flummery, but you can't get away from the fact that £50,000 is not to be sneezed at.
I don't know why people shouldn't sneeze at money sometimes. I should like to start a society for sneezing at £50,000. We'd have to begin small, of course. We'd start by sneezing at £5. The only trouble is we're all inoculated in our cradles against that kind of cold.
You will have your little joke. But you know as well as I do that it is only a joke. There can be no serious reason why I shouldn't take this money.
And I gather that you don't think it'll hurt my career?
Not a bit. It'll help it. It'll get you into all the comic papers.
Well, have you told him?
I have heard the news, Mrs. Crawshaw, and I have told Robert that in my opinion he should have no trouble in making the name of Wurzel-Flummery as famous as that of Crawshaw. In fact, I hope he will.
Oh, how nice of you.
Well, it's settled then. The lawyer fellow should be here soon. Perhaps we should be able... Ah, Viola. Did you want your mother?
Sorry, do I interrupt a family meeting? There's Richard, so it can't be very serious.
What a reputation.
Viola had better know, hadn't she?
She'll have to know sooner or later, of course.
Of course she will. So you'd better tell her. I knew there was something going on this morning.
Dear, you had better tell her.
Viola, Father has come into some property. It means changing our names, unfortunately. But Father doesn't seem to think it will matter.
How thrilling! What's the name, Mother?
It is... Oh, dear me, I shall never remember it.
Wurzel-Flummery.
Richard, you tell me if nobody else will.
Robert said it just now.
That wasn't a name, was it? I thought it was a... Oh, do say it again, Father.
Wurzel-Flummery.
Do you spell it like that? I mean like a Wurzel and like Flummery?
Exactly, I believe.
What a thrilling name! Who had it first?
They're an old Hampshire family. That is so, isn't it, Robert?
I said I had thought so. Margaret, can you find Buck over there for me?
Well, you haven't told us how you like being Miss Wurzel-Flummery yet.
I haven't figured out myself yet, Mummy. I shall have to stand in front of my glass and tell myself who I am.
Oh, it's all right for you. You know that you'll change your name one day, and then it won't matter what you've been called before.
Oh, won't it? It will have to appear in all the papers. A marriage has been arranged between Miss Viola Wurzel-Flummery, and everybody will say, and about time too, poor girl.
Have you found it yet, dear?
This is the 1912 edition.
Still, dear, if it's a very old family, it ought to be in by then.
I don't care how old it is. I think it's lovely. Oh, Richard, what fun it will be being announced. Just think of the footman throwing open the door and saying,
Mr. Dennis Clifton.
Ah, how do you do, Mr. Dennis Clifton? It is the lawyer, Mr. Dennis Clifton, isn't it?
It is. I apologize for not looking more the part, but my clothes did not arise from Clarkston in time. Very careless of them when they had promised.
But you have full legal authority in this matter, don't you?
Oh, decidedly. Oh, there's no question about that.
My wife, my daughter, my good friend Mr. Richard Merritt.
Dear me, Mr. Meriton. Oh, this is quite a situation, as we say in the profession.
In the legal profession?
In the theatrical profession. I am a writer of plays, Mrs. Crawshaw. I'm not giving away any secrets when I tell you that most of the lawyers in London thanks me for giving them my work.
I understood, Mr. Clifton, that you are the lawyer employed to wind up the affairs of the late Mr. Anthony Clifton?
Oh, certainly. Oh, there's no doubt about my being a lawyer. My clerk, a man of the utmost integrity, would give me a reference. I am in the books. I belong to the Law Society. But my heart turns elsewhere. Officially, I have embraced the profession of a lawyer. But we both know how these official embraces are.
I'm afraid that...
Unofficially, I am wedded to the muses.
oh, Richard, isn't he lovely?
Quite so. But just for the moment, Mr. Clifton, I take it that we are concerned with legal business. Should I ever wish to produce a play, the case would be rather different.
Admirably put. Pray regard me entirely as a lawyer, as long as you wish. Mr. Dennis Clifton was a superb lawyer, in spite of his indifferent makeup, his manner of taking off his gloves and dropping them in a hat.
I think perhaps Viola...
We'll leave you to your business, Robert.
Just one moment, if I may, Mr. Clifton. I have a letter for you.
For me?
Yes, my clerk, a man of the utmost... Oh, but I said that already. He took this letter around to your rooms this morning, but found only painters and decorators there. I brought it along in hopes that Mr. Crawshaw, but I never expected anything quite so delightful.
Thanks.
Well, do read it now, Mr. Meriton. One so rarely has the opportunity of being present when one's own letters are read. I think the habit they have of reading the letters out loud to one another on stage is such a delightful one.
Good heavens!
Richard, what is it?
199 Lincoln's Inn Fields. Dear sir, I have the pleasure to inform you that under the will of the late Mr. Anthony Clifton, you are a beneficiary to the extent of £50,000.
Richard!
A trifling condition is attached, namely that you should take the name of Wurzel-Flummery.
Impossible! Why would he leave any money to you?
Is this a joke, Mr. Clifton?
Oh, the money's there, all right. My clerk, a man of the
And I
utmost...
refuse it. I won't even argue about it. I'll have nothing to do with it. There's what I think of your money.
Oh, Richard! Mother, he mustn't! I must tell him! Richard!
Really, Mr. Clifton, I'm surprised at you.
And now, Mr. Crawshaw, we are alone.
Yes, well, I think, Mr. Clifton, you have a good deal to explain.
My dear Mr. Crawshaw, I am longing to begin. I've been waiting for this day for weeks. I spent over an hour this morning dressing for it. Perhaps I should begin at the beginning.
The documents in the case.
Oh dear, no. Just something to carry in the hand. It makes one look more like a lawyer. Watherston versus Towser, the Great Mississippi Canal Company. My clerk invents the titles. It keeps him busy. He's very fond of Towser. Towser is always coming in. You see, Mr. Crawshaw, this is my very first case, and I only got it because Anthony Clifton is my uncle. My efforts to introduce a little picturesqueness into the dull formalities of the law does not meet with the response one would have expected.
Yes, well, I'm a busy man, and if you could tell me as shortly as possible why Mr. Clifton has left the money to me, and apparently to Mr. Meriton, too, under these extraordinary circumstances, I shall be obliged to you.
Say no more. I am prepared to be entirely frank. It will be a pleasure.
You understand, of course, my position. I may say that I'm not without reputation in the country, and proud as I am to accept this sacred trust, which the late Mr. Clifton has seen fit, for one cannot say why, to bequeath to me. Yet the use of the name Wurzel-Flummery would be excessively awkward.
Excessively.
My object in seeing you was to inquire if it was absolutely essential that the name go with the money.
Well, you may have the name without the money, but you must have the name.
Of course I have nothing against the name, a good old Hampshire name.
My dear sir, you didn't really think that anyone had been called Wurzel-Flummery before. Oh, no. You and Mr. Meriton were to be the first, the beginners of the clan, the designers of the Wurzel-Flummery sporandum.
What do you mean, sir? Are you telling me that this is not a real name at all?
Oh, it's a name, all right. I know it is, because I made it up.
And you have the impudence to propose that I should take a made-up name?
Well, all names have to be made up sometime or other. Someone had to think of Adam.
I warn you, Mr. Clifton, that I do not allow this trifling with serious subjects.
It's all so simple, really. You see, my Uncle Anthony was a rather unusual man. He despised money. He wasn't afraid to put it in its proper place. The place he put it was a little below golf and a little above classical music. If a man were to say to him, "Would you like to make £1,000 this afternoon?" Well, he would say, well, it would depend on what he was doing. If we were about to play a round of
It's
golf...
perfectly scandalous to talk of money in this way.
Well, that's the way he talked of it. But he didn't find many to agree with him. He used to say that there was nothing, however contemptible, that a man would not do for money. I suggested one day that he leave a legacy with a sufficiently foolish name. Surely someone would be found to refuse it. I said, leave it to two people. Rival politicians, say. Men whose own names are already public property. Surely they wouldn't both accept it. "Dennis, my boy," he said, "upon what vile body should we experiment?" We decided on you and Mr. Meriton. The next step was to choose the name. I started on the obvious sort. Porker, Tosh, Bug, Spiffkins. My uncle would...
How dare you discuss me with your uncle? How dare you decide in some cold-blooded way whether I'm to be called Tosh or Porker?
My uncle wouldn't hear of Tosh or Porker. He wanted a humorous name, one he could lovingly roll around his tongue, one that suggested a sort of humorous contempt.
Wurzel-Flummery. I could still see the smile come up on his face in those latter months. He was thinking of his 2 Wurzel-Flummerys. I remember him saying, it was at the zoo. What a pity it was he didn't have enough money to leave to the whole cabinet. A whole bunch of Wurzel-Flummerys. It would have been jolly.
You force me to say, sir, that if that was the way you and your uncle used to talk together at the zoo, his death can only be described as a merciful intervention of Providence.
Oh, but he must be enjoying this all somewhere. I hope so. He would have loved this day. It was his only regret that the circumstances of the case wouldn't allow him to enjoy his own joke. But he had hopes that echoes of it would reach him wherever he may be. It was in those latter days, I fancy, that he became interested in spiritualism.
Mr. Clifton, I have no interest in the present whereabouts of your uncle, nor in what means he has of overhearing a conversation between you and myself. But if, as you so irreverently suggest, he is listening to us, I should like him to hear this, that in my opinion you are not a qualified lawyer at all, that you never had an uncle, and that this whole story about the will and the ridiculous condition attached is just the tomfool joke of a man who, by his own admissions, wastes most of his time writing unsuccessful farces. And I propose...
Pardon my interrupting, but you said farces, not farces, comedies of a whimsical nature.
Whatever they were, sir, I propose to report the whole matter to the Law Society. And you know your way out.
Then I am to understand that you refuse the legacy, Mr. Crawshaw.
What's that?
I am to understand that you refuse the £50,000.
If the money is really there, I most certainly do not refuse it.
Oh, it's there all right. And the name. Both waiting for you.
Then, sir, I accept them. I feel it is my duty to accept them in view of the confidence of the late Mr. Clifton's motives. I repudiate entirely the motives you have suggested to them, and feel it is my sacred duty to show what I think of your story by accepting this sacred trust which he has bequeathed to me. You will arrange further matters with my lawyer in the morning. A good day, sir.
Farewell, Mr. Wurzel-Flummery. May I say with my parting wish that your career will add fresh luster to my name. Exit Mr. Dennis Clifton with dignity.
Wollaston versus Townsend representing Great Missenden Canal Company? Bah!
If Richard has the very natural feeling that it would be awkward for me if there were 2 Wurzel-Flummerys in the House of Commons, I should be the last to interfere with his decision. In any case, I don't see what concern it is of yours, Viola.
But how can we get married if he doesn't take the money?
Married? What does this mean, Richard?
I'm sorry it has come out like this, Robert. We would have told you in a day or so anyway. Viola and I want to get married.
And what did you want to get married on?
Not very much, I'm afraid.
We'll be all right now, Father, because we shall have the £50,000.
But naturally this puts a very different complexion on matters.
So I've told him, of course, he must take it now, mustn't he?
I can hardly suppose, Richard, that you expect me to entrust my daughter to a man who is so little provident for himself that he throws away £50,000 just because some fanciful objection to the name that goes with it?
You don't understand, Robert.
I understand this, Richard, that if the name is good enough for me, it should be good enough for you. You don't mind asking Viola to take your name, but you consider it an insult if you're asked to take mine.
Do you want to be Mrs. Wurzel-Flummery?
Well, I'm going to be Miss Wurzel-Flummery anyhow, darling.
Oh, heaven help me, you'll make me take it, but you'll never understand.
Come, Richard, I understand perfectly. All that you were saying about money a little while ago, it's all perfectly true. It's just what I believe myself. But in practice, sometimes we have to make allowances. We have to sacrifice our ideas for others. I shall be very proud to have you for a son-in-law, and to feel that there are two of us together in Parliament, together upholding the name, the honor of it. And now that we are so close to be so closely related, perhaps you could come to feel that someday your views could be put forth more adequately from my side of the house?
Go on, Robert, I deserve it.
Well, Margaret will be excited to hear our news. And you must send the lawyer a line, or perhaps a telephone message would be better. Yes, Richard, I do think the telephone, it would be safer.
Come here, Mrs. Wurzel-Flummery.
Not Mrs. Wurzel-Flummery. Mrs. Richard. And soon, please, darling.
I don't know what I've done, Viola, but you're worth it. And God help me if I ever stop thinking so.
Now, where did I put those papers? Now, where? Oh, I beg your pardon, but I left some papers behind.
Richard, you'll tell him? Goodbye, Mr. Clifton. And thank you for writing such nice letters.
Goodbye, Miss Crawshaw.
No, say it once, just to see how it sounds.
Goodbye, Miss Wurzel-Flummery.
No, not Miss. Mrs.
You don't mean?
Yes, and I'm taking the money also, Mr. Clifton.
Dear me, what a situation. I wonder how a rough scenario would strike the managers.
Poor Mr. Clifton.
What do you mean, poor?
You missed all the best part. You missed everything I said about the money to Robert before you came.
Oh, was it very... Well, I expect Uncle Anthony heard it. Well, I must be getting on. I wonder if you've noticed some important papers lying about, in connection with the great Missedin... Ah, yes. Well, I shall tell my clerk we lost the case. He shall be quite disappointed. He was growing very fond of that canal. Then you are taking the money, Mr. Meriton?
Yes.
And Mr. Crawshaw, too?
Yes.
They're both taking the money. Uncle Anthony knew. He knew.
The other day.
No, I don't, really.
He said that you're I'm sorry. Let's try that again.
Okay.
He said that you're...
Crystal roll.
Well, you know what he said about you at Basingstoke the other day.
No, I don't, really.
He said that you're spiritual.
My hair.
I'm sorry, I can't get that line. What is it?
I have some particular business to discuss. If you're not going anywhere, I'd like to...
Let's do it over. Sorry. It's okay. Pick up that cue faster, please. I'll start leaving soon.
Try.
Good morning, Mr. Meriton. I do hope your breakfast was all right.
Excellent, thank you.
Did you want me, dear?
Yes.
This is so
I lost my belt.
Roll tape.
It's rolling.
Good. I mean, generally. And apart from your work in the house, sorry. And apart, of course, okay. Bloopers. Oh, reviewing. I mean, generally. No.
Start to
Sorry.
You can't crack me up, Tracy.
I'm sorry, really, I am.
I'm too professional.
I could be like Burt Reynolds now, you know that.
Why don't you do it on camera? We'll put it in the bloopers. Stand behind Mark and go.
Can I have a kiss? Please go.
I can tell you something else that Shakespeare. William Shakespeare said. Ah!
In one of his plays.
The sofa moved on me. If he met you suddenly in the street, seemed to dislike your appearance, took out a fiver and begged you to hurry off and alter yourself, of course you'd go pocket the money and
You're doing so well, Mary.
Beg your pardon. I should have said if he had left you £5 in his will. Well then, £10, £20, £100, £1,000, £50,000. It's just a question of price.
Will. I should have let you in.
Yes.
Yeah.
I missed it on that one. I'm sorry.
I couldn't help but laugh. I saw you smirk, and then you kept going. I couldn't.
I know, it's okay. These things happen all the time. I mean, Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise did it. I can't wait.
Right.
I'm Burt and you're Dom.
Oh, thanks.
Act. Father, Richard said he won't take the money, but I told him of course he must. He
There's no
must.
need to drag Robert into it, Viola.
My life.
And now for take 2.
If Richard feels it would be quite natural if there were not two.
Okay. Movie. Okay. We're having fun now, aren't we?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Suppose a stranger came up in the street and said, "My poor man, here's £5 for you. If..." Excuse me, I totally forgot my lines. Let's go back. Look at that. This your back.